الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ناجيتم الرسول فقدموا بين يدي نجواكم صدقة. The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. There's a request for the brothers to come a bit closer to the front, please, for those who are coming in. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The discussion concerning abrogation and the abrogated verses in the Quran is one of the most important discussions in Quranic sciences, and indeed one of the most fascinating discussions when one examines the revelation of the Quran over a 23-year period. A discussion which affects each and every one of our lives. How many times have you looked at a verse of the Holy Quran and wondered whether it substituted a verse before it? How many times have you looked at a legal ruling in the Quran and wondered whether that legal ruling abrogated a legal ruling before it? How many times have you looked at a verse in the Quran and wondered whether that verse's role was to replace a verse that was revealed before it? Many times when we look at two verses of the Quran of a similar nature, a question is asked: did this verse come to replace the other one, or did it come to provide more information about the other one? This particular discussion is known as the discussion of the Naskh and the Mansukh, known as the discussion of the abrogated and the abrogating verses. And without a doubt, according to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, is one of the most powerful discussions when looking at the Holy Quran. If you look at Imam al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh, Imam al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh, what does he state? He states, if a person does not know the Naskh and the Mansukh and the Muhkam and the Mutashabih, then they do not know the Quran and they have no relation with the Quran whatsoever. For Imam al-Sadiq to say something such strong words about the abrogated verses is without a doubt something to be taken consideration of. As in when Imam al-Sadiq says, if a person does not know the abrogating and the abrogated and the decisive and the ambiguous verses of the Quran, then they do not know the Quran and they have no relationship with the Quran. If you were to ask many Muslims about the topic of abrogation, many will not know what exactly the topic of abrogation is at all. Likewise, you find Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is once asking a person, do you know about the abrogated and the abrogating verses? The person said no. Then Imam looked at him and said, you are ruined. When Imam says you are ruined, what does he mean? He means that knowledge of the abrogating and the abrogated verses is one of the most important pieces of knowledge when looking at the Holy Quran. Without a doubt, Because if I truly have an attachment to the Holy Quran, that means I'm going to examine every verse in over the 23-year period. I'm going to ask, was this verse revealed over that verse? Was this verse revealed to replace that verse? Was this law revealed to replace that law? Because there are many times in the Quran where you feel that a law came to replace another. For example, if you were to look at the verse of alcohol, which we discussed a few nights ago, you find at the beginning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said what? Don't approach salah while you are intoxicated. But then later on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they ask you concerning alcohol, say that its disadvantages outweigh the advantages. Until at the end Allah completely forbade alcohol. When someone looks at that, the question that arises is that what is the abrogated and what is the abrogating? A verse which is abrogated is known as a mansukh verse. The abrogating or the abrogators were known as what? The Naskh. The act of abrogating is known as Naskh. Therefore, whenever you examine the Quran, if you see a discussion concerning abrogation, the question of that discussion is that were there verses that came to replace previous verses? Someone asks if there were verses that came to replace previous verses. Then what's the point of having those previous verses if they were later going to be taken over by another verse? And indeed, this became the subject of discussion of many great scholars. As in the first 4 centuries of the religion of Islam, so the first 400 years after Rasulullah died, there were 18 books alone written on this topic, about the abrogation of the Quran. This topic attracted so much attention from scholars that you would find scholars of every school in Islam. If you went to, for example, Tirmidhi, he wrote on this. Ahmad bin Hanbal wrote on this. You find, for example, later on, Suyuti wrote on this. Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi has the oldest treatise on this issue of the Naskh and the Mansukh. Even in the school of Ahl al-Bayt, scholars like Ayatollah al-Khoi, or indeed the great scholar by the name of Ma'rifat, have written extensively on this issue. Because they recognized when Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib tells a scholar, do you know about abrogation? And the scholar says no, and Imam Ali says to him, then you are ruined. How important is abrogation that Imam Ali says a person who doesn't know about it is ruined? How important is this topic that Imam as-Sadiq says, whoever doesn't know about it does not know the Quran and has no relationship with the Quran? As if someone turns around and says, hold on a minute, I've been reading the Quran for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years. Now you're coming and telling me that I have no relationship with the Quran? Well, if a person truly had a relationship with the Quran, they would have pondered over every legal verse and asked the question that why is it that one legal verse says this and another comes later and says that? Had we as Muslims pondered over this Quran, we would have seen a constantly evolving book meeting the intellectual needs over a 23-year period. But what did the Quran become for us except a book that we recite, hoping that there's barakah for us on the day of judgment without pondering over it? The discussion therefore of the Naskh and the Mansukh is a discussion that doesn't just relate to the 1,400 years ago, but rather is a discussion that relates to our time today. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the time of the Prophet recognized the needs of his ever-evolving nation, then has Islam recognized the needs of its ever-evolving nation today? If the aim of the Quran was to constantly receive guidance from Allah, where one law may be substituted by another, then is there a possibility that certain Sharia laws today need abrogation as well to meet the needs of the time? Therefore, this discussion is the discussion that affects our lives today. And I'd like to dissect this discussion in the following stages. Number 1, if Allah brings a law to replace a previous law, does that mean he has limitations in his knowledge? Number 2, what are the conditions for abrogation? And can anyone read the Quran and claim this verse abrogated that? Number 3, can a verse be abrogated, or is it just a ruling that abrogates another ruling? Number 4, why then keep these verses in the Quran? Why not delete them once they've been abrogated? Number 5, what is the importance of theological abrogation in contrast to legal abrogation? And what examples are there where Allah changes the plan which the human thought he had already planned? Let's examine this and seek to dissect the topic in complete depth. When a person says a verse which was a legal verse came to substitute a previous verse, the question arises as to the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Naskh means what? Naskh means that which replaces or that which substitutes. If you look within the Quran, Allah has mentioned the word naskh on numerous occasions. For example, Allah mentioned in Surah 2 verse 106, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها. Yes? نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, we do not replace a verse or cause it to be forgotten, except that we replace it with a verse that's better, yes, or like it. Notice the ayah didn't say, ما ننسخ من آية or what? ننسها. We do not replace a verse or cause it to be forgotten, except, yes, نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها, except that we bring one that is better than it or like it. The word naskh means what? The word naskh clearly means the idea of a replacement. Likewise in Surah 22 verse 52, when shaitan, Allah says that whenever shaitan tries to affect the prophets, فَيَنْسَخُ اللَّهُ مَا يُلْقِي الشَّيْطَانِ, Allah replaces or cancels what shaitan tries to do. Therefore, the meaning of the word naskh was the idea of replacing or the idea of cancelling something. The original definition was what? ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها ومثلها. The question arises, if Allah performs naskh, meaning that He gives you a law and then that law is later replaced, does that mean that Allah's knowledge is limited? Because sometimes people ask the question that why didn't you just put that law in the first place? Why did you first give this law and then later in the Quran you brought another law? If we take the example of alcohol, why, Ya Allah, did you later say it's haram? Why not from the beginning just say it's haram? People looked at that and what did they say? They said Allah therefore's knowledge is limited. Allah doesn't know what's going to happen in His community. He keeps making up things in the Quran as He sees His community move. On the contrary, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is not limited at all. No. We have got the wrong impression of the meaning of the idea of naskh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we call Him Rabb al-Alameen, Rabb means the nourisher, correct? He nourishes His creation and brings them up and educates them, correct? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gave us a verse and then it was overridden by another verse, the problem wasn't with Allah, no. Rather, Allah was giving us doses in order to be able to culture our new community. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like that doctor. When you go to the doctor gives you the whole dose straight away, or the doctor tells you, listen, take these doses in small quantities, yes? I'm going to give you these doses, every 6 hours take this dose. If I notice that you're doing well, then I'm going to replace that dosage. I don't need to. However, if it's very harsh on you, then what I'll do is I'll give you a dosage which is a bit smaller. A doctor, what does he do with this patient? When a doctor receives a patient who's in need of help, does it mean that the doctor, when he gives different medicines, does that mean the doctor doesn't know? No. The doctor wants to help nourish that patient with small doses. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He saw this early Arab community, He had known that many of them had just come out from the period of Jahiliyyah, correct? Therefore, He knew that I can't straight away give them an ayah of the Quran which completely changes their culture. What I'll do is that in doses, I'll provide them with ayahs. Because someone turned around and said, what? They said, if you're saying that there are legal verses that came later on, and Allah used them to replace His previous ayat, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is limited. Allah is making mistakes. We reply, no. To us, those verses are abrogated. To Allah, it was part of His step-by-step plan to culture us. Understand the difference? To me and you, with 2020 hindsight, those verses abrogated previous verses. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He already knew I was going to send this verse, and then I'll send another verse, and then I'll send another verse, until they're able to handle the doses that I've given them. Therefore you find, if you were to take as an example, Surah 4 verse number 15. Surah 4 verse 15 said what? In those days the Arabs, if their wife committed adultery, what would they do? They'd confine their wife to the house until she dies. So you look up the door, yes? Until she dies, in that house you confine her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah 4 verse 15 it said yes, you confine the lady who commits adultery to the house until death, unless Allah shows another way. When He says unless I show another way, what does that mean? That means that unless there is another avenue which is going to be opened in order that that law when a woman commits adultery is removed. Which avenue did He open? Surah 24 verse 2. When Allah spoke of الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة. What did Allah say? He said the adulteress and the adulterer, what do you do to them? You whip them 100 whips or 100 lashes. What you found here was what? The Arabs in their culture, the lady who commits adultery is confined to death in the house. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that's not their culture, but then later on an opinion of the scholars is what? Is that the verse is abrogated with what? A verse is abrogated with 100 lashes. The scholars on this area differ. On which point? The scholars differ on this area as to how many incidents are there of Naskh in the Quran. What do we mean? You see, if you were to look at the scholars of Ahl Sunnah and the scholars of the Shia, they differ as to the number of times abrogation has occurred within the Quran. For example, Suyuti believed there were 21 incidents of abrogation within the Quran. Suyuti, within the Itqan, lists 21 verses which have abrogated previous verses. You find, for example, Shah Waliullah said how many? 5. Ma'rifat said how many? 12. Ayatullah al-Khu'i said how many? 1. In Ayatullah al-Khu'i's opinion, there was a strict criteria before a person looked at which verses abrogated the previous verses. Please understand this delicate point. Because if you give it to any Muslim now, any Muslim can pick up the Quran, they'll pick me a random ayah, they'll look at another ayah, and they'll say, you know what? How do I know this ayah didn't overtake that ayah? As in sometimes when you look within the Quran, you may see a legal verse, then you see the same topic in another part of the Quran. And you think to yourself, well, how do I know that that legal verse has not overtaken the other? In the school of Ahl al-Bayt, we have a rigid criteria when it comes to this issue. In which way? In the school of Ahl al-Bayt, the criteria for knowing if an abrogating verse has abrogated a verse previous to it, the first criteria without a doubt is to look at the words of the Holy Prophet and the Ma'sumin. No doubt. The Holy Prophet and the Ma'sumin, you look and see, did they say that this ayah abrogated a previous ayah? If the Prophet and the Ma'sumin have said that ayah 58:13 came to abrogate ayah 58:12, then yes, we say that clearly. If an Imam of Ahl al-Bayt has said one ayah came to replace another, then we stick by the one that's been what? The one that's replaced the previous. Our second criteria is what? The ijma' of the fuqaha. Because when I want to know, say I don't find the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt mentioning this, we look for the scholars, Shaykh al-Kulayni, Shaykh al-Mufid, Shaykh al-Saduq, Allam al-Hilli, Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, Shahid al-Awwal, Shahid al-Thani. We look for them. We see what are they saying. Has that verse been replaced? Has it continued? Is the ruling still applicable? Or did a new ruling come over and replace it? Number 3, and importantly, we have to also make sure that we understand what? That abrogation can only take place with the legal verses in the time of Rasulullah. You don't have abrogation of the Quran after Rasulullah. No one can come after Rasulullah and say that this ayah, please mark this point carefully when you enter your discussions, that this particular ayah replaces another ayah. Why? Because if everyone can come after Rasulullah and make up their own opinion as to which ayah replaces another, then the whole legal system is fallen. Because then we're going to have 100 different schools which claim that this ayah replaced that ayah. Number 4, Ayatollah al-Khu'i. Why does he have a very strict criteria for Naskh? Ayatollah al-Khu'i said, in contrast to Ma'rifat, and both of them are our great ulama, Ayatollah al-Khu'i said, a verse which has been replaced by another, if Naskh has truly taken place, please understand this point, if Naskh has truly taken place, then what has happened is that they've acted on the first verse, then Allah has stopped them from acting on the second verse. Please understand this point. Ayatollah al-Khu'i says, if the first verse, for example, the first verse says, whenever you go to visit the Prophet, give some charity away. Someone has to act that. If there's a verse that then says, stop, you don't need to do that anymore, then Ayatollah al-Khu'i says that's an example of Naskh. Because the first verse was acted upon. The second verse which says stop, that's an example of Naskh. Ma'rifat on the other hand said, no, you look at the wording of one verse from the other, and then you'll know if Naskh has taken place. Taking this on board, we ask the question, when we say abrogation, what is the criteria for abrogation? 3 opinions came forward. The first opinion is, and the first question was asked, can a verse and a ruling both be abrogated at the same time? What does this mean? One opinion is that a verse could have completely been abrogated. That means it's not there anymore. And the ruling of that verse is completely abrogated. Do we believe in such a thing or no? No, of course we don't. Why don't we believe in such a thing? Can we believe there was a verse from the Quran, but that's now it's been completely removed? Why not? Because the Quran, if there are verses which have been removed, how then do I know that this is the complete Quran with us today? If someone says to me that an ayah has been abrogated, not meaning that it's been replaced, no, meaning that the ayah is lost, and the ruling is lost, do we believe in such a thing? No. Our brothers in Ahl Sunnah, Suyuti narrates Aisha saying this. Aisha narrates there used to be a verse about the 10 sucklings, yes? About if you suckle, yes, a man suckles from the woman 10 times, then he becomes mahram to her. Go and check in Egypt what friction that caused a couple of years ago. Anyway, so if a person suckles from the woman 10 times, then for example he becomes mahram to her. And there was a verse on stoning. So these are 2 ayat which were in the Quran. They were in the Quran. But they were under my bed and a goat came and ate them and we don't have them anymore. Yes? That type of naskh where an ayah is completely lost from the Quran. That naskh, do we believe in it or no in the school of Ahlul Bayt? No, of course we don't. That idea that the ruling is gone and that the verse has completely gone, we believe no. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidun. We are the ones who send down the reminder and we are the ones who will protect it. Allah protected His holy Quran. There is no way that there's an ayah about something and that ayah was eaten by a goat. Therefore, that first opinion about Naskh is completely rejected in the school of Ahlul Bayt. The second opinion about Naskh is what? That a ruling stays, but the verse is missing. A ruling stays, but the verse of the ruling is missing. That's been abrogated. How? Umar ibn al-Khattab said, this is the second opinion, Umar ibn al-Khattab said, in the time of Rasulullah there was a verse, وَالشَّيْخ وَالشَّيْخَةُ, yes, إِذَا زَنِيَا فَارْجُمُوهُمَا. Yes, the man and the woman, if they commit zina, stone them. Umar said this was an ayah in the Quran, but we can't find it in the current Quran, but we still have to apply the law. You know, I find it interesting when you go to Saudi Arabia and you go there and they actually have books saying the Shia believe in a different Quran. I believe in a different Quran. One had goat and the other one had suckling, and now this one says what? A sheikh and the sheikha, if they commit zina, stone them. Is there an ayah in the Quran about stoning? No. But they say this was an ayah, but Allah completely abrogated it. But the ruling remains with us. Ya Allah, why completely remove it from the Quran? Leave it in the Quran, no problem. And we'll take the ruling, that's it. Why remove it from the Quran? Therefore, Suyuti says the second meaning of abrogation was what? Umar ibn al-Khattab saying there was an ayah in the Quran. The ayah is now lost, but the ruling we have to stick by. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, do we accept this? No, no way. That you don't stick by a ruling on a verse of the Quran that was there and disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? Allah can't protect His holy book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His holy book, He can't protect it. If there's an ayah from the Quran, it disappeared, we have to stick by the ruling. If you go to anyone now, you could say to them, you know what, there was an ayah, but it's not there anymore, but this is the ruling. And now we'll have havoc in our legal system. Everybody will start bringing up verses of the Quran which claim to be there, but were completely missing. That's why even another school said what? There was a verse which says, al-walad lil-farash, which means what? That the boy who comes from zina, he is to what? He is to his parents, but the adulterer is to be what? The adulteress or the adultering parent is to be stoned. They said that this was also an ayah, but what? That ayah is now missing. Even that's not an ayah. That is something that is not part of the Quran at all. Therefore, the second opinion was what? An ayah may be abrogated, but the ruling has to remain. We reject that as well. The third opinion is what? The opinion of the school of Ahlul Bayt. A ruling in a verse in the Quran replace another ruling in another verse of the Quran. What do we mean? In the school of Ahlul Bayt, our belief in abrogation is what? Our belief in abrogation is that you may have a certain ruling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides that a new ruling will come in to replace that previous ruling. For example, if you look in the Quran in Surah 2 verse 240, at the beginning of Islam, when there is a widow in the community, her iddah used to be 1 year. Surah 2 verse 240. The iddah of a widow at the beginning was 1 year. The maintenance for a widow was for a year. Yes? Her maintenance was for a year and her iddah period was for a year. Among some of the scholars of Ahlul Bayt, Surah 4 verse 12 abrogated Surah 2 verse 240. How? Surah 4 verse 12 said, the iddah for a widow is now how much? Who could tell me, what's the iddah for a widow? Iddah for a widow. 4 months and 10 days. In Surah 2 verse 240, it said the iddah for a widow is a year. Surah 4 verse 12 came and said, hold on. Now that that's your culture and custom you were used to in Arabia, no, we have to replace this with a new law. Did Allah not know? No, Allah wanted them to be accustomed to the laws of Islam. Then He helps them develop. He nurtures them into understanding what the role of each of them is in society. The iddah from being originally a year for a widow, the iddah became how long? 4 months and 10 days. How about maintenance for a widow? Is it fair that if a lady becomes a widow at 45, is it fair that you maintain her only for that 1 year? Is that fair? No, it's not. So in Surah 4 verse 12, the maintenance became what? A quarter of the share of her husband's estate. Of course, if there aren't any others who are within the family, a quarter of the shares of the husband's estate. If someone looked at Surah 2 verse 240 alone, they'd say to me, said, Ammar, once in your lecture you said that the iddah of a widow is 4 months and 10 days. I think you got it wrong. So I'd say, what do you mean I got it wrong? I'd say Surah 2 verse 240. Say, yes, but Surah 4 verse 12 abrogated 240. Do you know now why Imam Sadiq says a person who doesn't know abrogation doesn't know the Quran? Because Imam Sadiq saying, if you don't read the whole of the Quran, and you don't research about which verse abrogated which verse, then don't say you have a relationship with the Quran, because you'll end up taking one ayah and you miss out another ayah which explains that ayah. How many times have you taken an ayah in the Quran by itself and you're like, you know what, I'm so confused with this ayah. Then later on you realize, you know what, actually I think this ayah is the one which explains this ayah, correct? Allama Tabatabai used to say, do tafsir of the Quran by the Quran. Yes? When you open the whole Quran, don't just take a solitary ayah. Ask which verse abrogated which one. Therefore, some scholars said what? Surah 4 verse 12 abrogated Surah 2 verse 240. Ma'rifat said what? Surah 8 verse 66 abrogated Surah 8 verse 65. Please focus on this carefully. Surah 8 verse 65. Many people ask me about it. Allah says if there are 20, it's a verse about jihad. It's trying to encourage jihad in the Muslims, yes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them, if you are 20, you'll defeat 200. How many of you have read this verse? Yes? If you are 20, you'll defeat 200. Yep. Let's say if you are 100, you'll defeat 1,000. This verse, Surah 8, verse 65, was trying to give encouragement to the Muslims to say, listen, I promise if there's 20 of you, you can defeat 10 times your number. It seemed that the Muslims, even though they got that encouragement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, were not affected. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to them, you know what? Al-an, the next verse begins, that you know what? I recognize that maybe you aren't able to have that confidence that 20 of you can defeat 200, then let me at least tell you, 1,000 of you can defeat 2,000. People ask, how comes the ratio changed? In 865 it said 20 can defeat 2,000. What's the ratio? 1 to 10, correct? In Surah 8 verse 66, the ratio is 1,000 can defeat 2,000. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to them, I'm trying to tell you, my dear Muslims on this earth, that with 20 of you, if you have the strong iman, you can defeat 200 on a battlefield. But if you don't believe me, then don't worry. Say for example, there's 50 of you, you'll defeat 100. Meaning what? Meaning I recognize that at first I told you, go for jihad, even if there's 20 of you, you'll defeat 200. But now, even if there's half the number, I'll be okay. If half of you realize that half the number can defeat the opposition, not a tenth of them, then you're allowed to go on jihad as well. Ma'rifat said 866 abrogated 865. That 865 had said, if there's 20 of you, you should go for jihad against 200. But then, recognizing that they didn't have that strong confidence in that ruling on jihad, Allah said, okay, when you get to half the number of the opposition, then you can go on jihad. Ayatollah al-Khou'i said, no. He differed with him. Why? Ayatollah al-Khou'i said, correct, 865 is next to 866. But we never saw anyone act 865 for us to know that 866 replaced it. You see, Ayatollah al-Khou'i, what does he say? He said, if the soldiers went for war, and there was 20 against 200, and that they felt they couldn't win, if then the ayah came down, and said to them, don't worry, you don't have to go to war again, yes? Only if you have half the number go. Ayatollah al-Khou'i says, then only then can I say that 866 replaced 865. But while a person has not gone on to that jihad, I am not confident enough to say that 866 replaced 865. Ma'rifat replied back to Ayatollah al-Khou'i, because Ma'rifat died only recently. He replied back to Ayatollah al-Khou'i, said, what? He said, I appreciate what Ayatollah al-Khou'i says. Yes, in his famous 6-volume work, Ma'rifat has a phenomenal 6-volume work on this issue. End of the 2nd volume, he discusses all this issue. He says, but Allah, when he uses the word al-an, now, indicates that there is already a shift happening from one message to another. That means the new message is abrogating the previous. You understand? So Ma'rifat looks at the Arabic connection, Ayatollah al-Khou'i looks at the incident. The only ayah Ayatollah al-Khou'i believes is an ayah in the Quran where one ruling abrogated another, Surah 58 verse 12 and 13. That's the only ayah he believes. Which one? This ayah says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ناجيتم الرسول فقدموا بين يدي نجواكم صدقة ذلك خير لكم وأطهر فإن لم تجدوا فإن الله غفور رحيم. O you who believe, yes? When you come to ask questions from the Holy Prophet, pay. The Arabs, the Muslims, would come and sit with Rasulullah all day. Because they know he's a man of knowledge, correct or no? What is he a man of? Knowledge. When you meet men of knowledge, you want to be around them the whole time, don't you? Unless you're asking stupid questions. Rasulullah is a man of knowledge. These Arabs would come, Ya Rasulullah, where's my mom right now? Well, your mom's passed away. Yeah, but where is she? He's like, Allah knows. Where's my dad? Allah knows. When's the day of judgment? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who knows. They wouldn't leave him to rest. Never. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not happy that the Holy Prophet was doing this for free. No way. This is religion. Surely the Holy Prophet would have to give knowledge for free. You're giving Islamic knowledge, should be for free. Surely your Lord will not make you charge. Because a man of knowledge is not meant to charge. Sure? A man of knowledge is meant to do everything for free. The moment you put a charge is when everyone's true character comes out, correct? Because while it's free, everyone makes use of the free. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you who claim to have belief in this man, yes? إِذَا نَاجَيْتُمُ الرَّسُولِ, when you come to ask me questions, فَقَدْمُوا بَيْنَ يَدَيْ نَجْوَاكُمْ صَدَقَةً, pay. Knowledge comes for free? No, wait. It's got to come for free. No. It's Islamic knowledge. No. Pay. Ya Allah, this is your Prophet. How could he charge? How could he charge? Meant to come for free. Every other job in the world you should charge except this. Pay. Let's see your true love for knowledge when you have to pay for it. You claim you love knowledge, yes? You claim you love ilm. I love to learn about the Quran. Pay. No, but the person shouldn't be asking. This time the asker is up there, not here. Pay before you come and ask. You think you can come and waste this man's time like this without paying? Pay. Appreciate his ilm. So, only one man did it. It's beautiful, isn't it? The real test for a lover of the message of Islam is whether they're actually willing to pay for their own spiritual benefit. When it's free, everybody's running. The moment you ask to pay, everyone starts saying, why do they charge? Only one man said, you know what, I don't mind paying. Because if I go to that man, the doors of knowledge all open for me every day. Only one man acted by this ayah, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Do a second salawat. Do a second salawat so we remember the point. And a third salawat, inshallah. He said, just pay a dirham. That's all you have to give away. And you'll receive the benefits of Rasulullah's knowledge, Quran, Hadith, wisdom, everything. None of them came except one man. Every day, here's a dirham, here's a dirham, here's a dirham. It's the best money I ever invested in this religion. How can I invest for rubbish out there when I don't want to invest for ilm? A day, give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said to them, this is good for you. فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا, if you don't have, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. أَأَشْفَقْتُمْ أَن تُقَدِّمُوا بَيْنَ يَدَيْ نَجْوَاكُمْ صَدَقَاتٍ. Then he abrogated the verse by saying, do you find it hard to pay this payment now? Wow. 58:12 had said, pay. He realized only one man truly has that passion where he's willing to give whatever it costs to hear from a teacher of religion. So he said, what, do you find it hard when I ask you to pay for knowledge? Yes? Don't worry. Then keep up your prayers and your fasting, and I am ever forgiving. Oh Arab man, don't be stingy with your money. When knowledge is free, all of you praise. But when knowledge comes at a price, all of you run. Anyway, Ayatollah al-Khoui, what do you say? He says Surah 58 verse number 13, abrogated verse 12, for sure. He said because the law at the time was now, whenever you want to go and visit Rasulullah, you have to pay something, correct? Now what? Now it's been removed. He goes, that's a clear sign of abrogation. Why? Because Ali ibn Abi Talib's merit is he's the only man who ever paid that payment which I asked. And now that Ali ibn Abi Talib's paid it, now the fact that I've said stop means that Ayatollah al-Khoui said there's a clear abrogation. That now no more. If you want to come and visit Rasulullah now, all of you come. Yes, because now we know the difference between the iman of one man and that none of you can come near this man in iman. Correct? So therefore what do you have? You have that abrogation clearly occurred. According to Ayatollah al-Khoui in this ayah, according to Ma'rifat, he said no. Other ayahs as well. It's a debate that continues to be alive. Someone asked the question, then why is it that those ayah which was abrogated, like 58:12, why don't we just delete it from the Quran? I said, what's the use now? 58:12 is of no use. No. Every ayah which is a merit for Ali ibn Abi Talib is a use for mankind. No doubt. Number one. Number two, those ayahs which were abrogated, alhamdulillah, it shows us the flow of Islam over a 23-year period. It shows us how Islam came at the beginning, saw the way these men were treating their woman, saw the way these men were treating each other, saw the way society was developing, saw the way the Sahabas viewed Rasulullah. These verses allow us to understand how the Quran came as a guidance. If I delete Surah 58 verse 12 and all I leave is 58:13, yes, 58:13 abrogated verse 12. But I'll never know why there was an abrogation, and I'll never know for whom the abrogation was revealed. Therefore, when someone comes and tells me that if there are verses which don't have no use, no, the alcohol verses, 590, 2219, 443, all of them have uses. Why? Because they show us the step-by-step abrogation. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cultured this community in a step-by-step abrogation in order that they were able to slowly get closer towards Him. Therefore, you find the question arises today, can this abrogation continue in Muslim communities today? Well, abrogation of the Quran, no. But abrogation of what were punishments at that time, could they be abrogated today? Possibly. Ayatollah al-Khomeini, may Allah bless his soul, and Ayatollah Bujnordi, may Allah bless his soul, they had a debate on the issue of stoning the adulteress in Iran. In Iran, the adulterer or the adulteress, if you have to stone them, you've seen sometimes that the West uses this, that they say Islam is a barbaric religion, Islam is a religion where you stone an adulteress, she's dug into the ground. And I think up until, let's say, 20, 25 years ago in Iran, you would have found situations where you could go, there'd be a lady dug in the ground. Not many, but there were situations. So the opinion was asked, Ayatollah Bujnordi and Ayatollah Khomeini had this discussion, that at the time of the Prophet, yes, stoning was something normal. Persia, Rome, Greece, empires before had even stoned or even burned the adulteress. But now in Iran, when there are so many media cameras watching us, can't we abrogate the law of stoning to possibly find a law of forgiveness, or a law where that adulteress is educated somewhere until she's reformed? The question which many fuqaha are asking now is that while the Quran abrogated one law over another to meet the needs of a people over 23 years from Mecca to Medina, are we as Muslims performing the same function as Allah wanted in the Quran? If Allah wanted in the Quran that one ayah replaces a previous ayah because the Muslims intellectually are developing and meeting the needs of their time, could it not be now that one punishment may override a previous punishment, or one hadith may override a previous hadith? This was a debate the both of them had, because in the opinion of one of them, he said, when that lady is dug into the ground, maybe Allah said, let half her body rise from the ground and the other half below the ground, so that there's a chance for her to escape, not a chance for us to kill her. Maybe there's a chance that Allah wants to find an avenue where she's not killed. Maybe there's a chance where she could go to a prison, but in that prison get educated about her behavior and how much her behavior has affected society. Adultery is not something small. Adultery destroys families, adultery destroys communities, and so on. So in other words, do not think that in Qom and Najaf these discussions haven't continued. No. Even now, people are asking the question that if in the Quran an ayah came to replace an ayah because of the time, then why can't today a punishment come to replace a punishment whose context was 7th century Arabia? Yes, in Arabia this was normal. But today in the 21st century, can't we have a context that is different from that time? Can't we allow our fiqh to continue to be modern, to continue to be developing? These are discussions that are being had without a doubt. And these are discussions which all of you should have. That all of you who enter legal studies, study fiqh, go and see what are the current debates, study the Quran, make theories from the Quran. If in the Quran Allah gives a law, then replaces it, then why not look for new theories in Islamic law as well? Islam and the Quran are not something dead. They are meant to be alive in the heart of every Muslim. That every Muslim is meant to continuously be thinking. Therefore, in the Quran, you had legal abrogation. Then you had a second type of abrogation, which was what? Theological abrogation. What's that? Legal abrogation is when one law replaces another. Theological abrogation is when Allah changes the plan for His creation from something they didn't expect. What do we mean? If in the Quran, legal abrogation means an ayah replaces another ayah, can't we have theological abrogation where something that was meant to be written can still be changed by Allah whenever He wants? Musa in the Quran says, I went to Sinai for 30 days and it was extended by 10. When Allah says, when He went to Sinai, Musa, what does Allah say? We sent him for how many days? 40, correct? Musa said 30 plus 10. Why? Allah from the beginning knew He's going to go for 40. Musa only knew 30. Allah changed His plan and told him to stay for another 10. Ibrahim in his dream sees he has to sacrifice what? His son, correct? In Ibrahim's plan, he's going to sacrifice who? His son, correct? What does he end up sacrificing? Sheep. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in theological abrogation is telling us, even those things you're 100% certain of, I can still change the plan because I'm the greatest of planners. If now my death is written that I'm going to die at the age of 70, can that change or no? In Lawh al-Mahfuz it doesn't. In Lawh al-Mahu wal-Ithbat it does. The guarded tablet has my age as 70. Lawh al-Mahu wal-Ithbat is that age which is open to change. Someone says, what do you mean? I'm destined to die at the age of 70. But if I perform Salat al-Rahim with my family, Allah promises He can change my age that I can live for another 30 years. Does that mean Allah's knowledge is limited or Malik al-Maut's knowledge is limited? Malik al-Maut has a clipboard. It says 70. I send an email to my auntie telling her that I love her. Allah can increase the age by 30. Did that mean Allah never knew? No. Allah knew that I'd live till 100. Malik al-Maut's knowledge is open to change. Because if Malik al-Maut's knowledge is the same as Allah, then we should be worshipping Malik al-Maut, correct? Allah highlighted what? That theological abrogation in creation can take place. That do not think that your destiny is definitely all written in the eyes of Malik al-Maut. You could still, if you want, change your destiny. Because this opens a completely different avenue. Which avenue? And I don't want to go too deep into this avenue, but a completely different avenue. Did Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam have to know about Karbala? Is he certain from a young age that he's going to die in Karbala? If you go to any majlis in the world, they say to you that he knew he was going to die at Karbala from a young age. How then does he fight at Jamal and Siffin when he knows he's not going to die there? When I'm at Jamal, I'm fighting the opposition, correct? What did my granddad tell me when I was younger? Where will I die? So how do I fight at Jamal? How do I fight? When I'm fighting, do I think I'm going to die here? Hold on a minute. then how would I be told about Karbala? How do I know when I'm fighting in Jamal that, hold on a minute, what's going on? I'm going to die in Karbala. No one can kill me here today. Shaykh al-Mufid posited the opinion that Imam al-Hussein, it's not necessary that he had to have knowledge of the unseen for Karbala. He said because he knows very well Allah, if He wants to, can change His plan any second. So you fight with the same sincerity wherever you are, because just because you've been told about a place doesn't mean Allah, if He wants to, can change the plan at any moment. Doesn't Allah also say in the Quran, we don't change a group of people until they change from themselves? That means our destiny is in our hands. Yes, we can change our own destiny. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may tell us about a certain destiny, but then He may want to change it. That means with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, those who say that he knew he's going to die at Karbala, but if the question is posed back to you that the battles before Karbala, how did he fight if he knows he's going to die over there? Imam al-Hussein knows very well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He wants to, can change a plan at any second, so I'll fight with the same sincerity whichever battlefield I'm on. Whatever Allah has written for me, He has more knowledge than me. Therefore, theological abrogation was what? The idea that Allah, if He wants to, can change a plan at any second. And that you as the human being, therefore, are able in your own destiny to change the plans. That you as a human being, if you want to, if you pray your prayer on time, Allah may increase your life. If, for example, you maintain Salat al-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may also increase your life from the span that's been given. For Rasulullah would say, whoever performs Salat al-Rahim, Allah will change the date of their death from what's written by a possible extra 30 years. And whoever doesn't perform Salat al-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may reduce the age of their death from what the angel of death has by up to 30 years. Meaning what? Meaning that there is still abrogation possible even in our lifespans in this world. And truly, what did Rasulullah say? He said, whoever looks after their family, I'll look after them on the day of judgment. Whoever has mercy towards their family, I'll show them mercy on the day of judgment. Imagine then whoever shows mercy to his family, what mercy will Allah show them on the day of judgment, correct? Whoever shows mercy to Al Muhammad, what type of mercy will Allah show him? Whoever honors their teachings, protects their legacy, looks after their principles, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without a doubt will shower them with His mercy. But how about those who didn't show mercy to Al Muhammad? What would Allah show to them? That if they let down the family of Rasulullah, not just let down, if they whipped the grandchildren of Rasulullah, yes? If they chained the grandchildren of Rasulullah up. Do you know Sayyidah Zainab, what she narrates, that one of the saddest moments for her in the bazaar in Sham was what? She says, when we were held together from our necks by chains, correct? But me and Kulthum were tall, Sukaina and Ruqayya were short. So they had to tiptoe because the chain was pulling their neck away. Imagine you're taller and the younger children are shorter and all of you are connected by chains, correct? So that means the younger children can't walk properly because you, the taller one, are rubbing across their neck. She said, I'd see Ruqayya being slapped by the men in Sham when we'd walk, yes? And they'd come and slap the granddaughter of Rasulullah, the daughter of Imam al-Hussein. But you know what was so sad? That Ruqayya would keep asking, Auntie Zainab, where is my father? Auntie Zainab, where is he? Ever since his horse came back, I haven't seen him. Sayyidah Zainab says, I tried many times to tell her, your father is on a journey. Ya Allah, let us return back to the grave of Ruqayya in Sham. Ya Allah, let us go back to that holy grave. Sayyidah Zainab says, I would keep saying to her, Ruqayya, 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 remain patient, please. Your father's on a journey. What do you tell a 4-year-old girl? What do you say to her? Her father's dead? She would say to her, your father's on a 4-year-old, he's on a journey. Until Sayyidah Zainab says, we were in the prison in Sham. All of us were asleep in the middle of the night. She said, all of a sudden we hear a scream. I wake up from my scream. I see Ruqayya crying. I said to her, Ruqayya, what's wrong? She said, I want to see my father, Abu Abdullah. Those of you who have 4-year-old grandchildren, imagine the feeling. How is it when your granddaughter begins to cry in front of you? She said, oh I want to see Abu Abdullah, my father. I just saw him in my dream. My auntie, I saw him. He said to me, come back to me, Ruqayya, come back. Yazid soldiers, they heard a scream. They came to him. They said to him, Master, there is a girl who's screaming. He said to them, why? They said to him, because she wants to see the head of her father. He said, very well, take the head of Hussein and show the girl. They put the head of Imam al-Hussein in a bowl and they brought it to Ruqayya. Ruqayya looked towards the bowl. She said, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat. They said to her, it's not food. She said, then what is it? She removed the bowl and she saw the holy head of Abu Abdullah in front of her. But the words that she said really hurt the heart. She said, oh Father who dyed your beard with all that blood. Oh Father who severed your neck from your body. Oh Father who's there for the orphans of Al Muhammad after you. She fell on her father's head. She fell unconscious. Sayyidah Zainab turned round to Imam Zain al-Abidin. She said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Imam Zain al-Abidin looked at her and said, what is it? She said, Ruqayya has died. And that moment, you know what the narrations say? Imagine the fathers who are here. You have the young children. Imagine your young daughter sees your head in front of her. She had passed away. Sayyidah Zainab took her to a lady. The lady looked at her. She said, how can I help you? She said, can you wash the body of my niece? So the lady said, no problem. The lady went away. She came back a few moments later. She said to her, Zainab, there's an issue. She said, what is it? She said, I can't wash her body. Zainab said to her, why? She said, I see blue marks on her body. Oh Zainab, did she have an illness before she died? Sayyidah Zainab said to her, no. She said, then what is it? She said, those are the whips of Shimr bin al-Jawshan on her back. Further than that, Sayyidah Zainab narrates, I returned back to Karbala on the 40th. She says, when I returned back to Karbala, the narrations mention from Imam Zain al-Abidin that she walked towards the grave of Imam al-Hussein. She said to Abu Abdullah, I looked after all the trusts, but I left Ruqayya in Sham. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad and Al Muhammad. May Allah bless all your tears. Ya Allah, allow these tears to speak to us and speak for us on the day of judgment. Ya Allah, soften our hearts away from the stone-hearted so that we're able to cry for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our brothers in the Muslim world. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of our 12th Imam, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before the loudest of your salawat.